Today, ready? Okay. Hello and welcome to Live from Studio Venus. I'm Laura Lee and today my guest is Stacey Mackintosh. I met her when I had my shop, Drunken Sailor, but it's been fun getting to know you and getting to know your interests because of course our shop was sort of like 50s style, which you rocked equally well.
Yeah.
But your heart's in sort of
the Middle Ages.
And yeah, when did you have you always, since you were a kid? I know did you grow up in Switzerland or spent a lot of time there?
I've been really fortunate that for my dad's side, they're all Swiss. So we were fortunate enough that we saved all of our money to every few years we go back and we visit the family.
Oh, nice.
So I've been really fortunate to have Swiss family, and now that they're traveling everywhere, I call it the European family.
Yeah.
It's kind of everywhere now.
Well, and that was one of the things when I was kind of reading about you, and you were sort of saying, yes, you're kind of Swiss, but then all around Switzerland are all of these different countries that. Yeah. Do you have a favorite country? Or do you have to say Switzerland?
I miss Switzerland a lot.
I've never been. What's it like?
It's like Canada, but even cleaner.
Yeah?
And I don't know. I speak French and English.
Yeah.
And you go there, and the average number of languages spoken is per person. There's a lot of languages there. For example, the last time we were there, we were just at a food vendor at one of the markets. And that lady, I'm pretty sure I counted at least 4 different languages that I understood.
Really?
And there was 2 others that I'm like, could be the same one, might not be. And it's not a surprise there.
Yeah.
There's a lot of ability to access other nations and get places there. So it just...
Yeah, it's a lot closer. And so, when I think, some are only a couple hours from another country that speaks a completely different language.
Yeah.
And so, imagine if we went to Calgary and they all spoke a different language, we'd probably get to know it fairly well, right?
And you'd also just respect that that's the language that the people speak. Different from Lethbridge to Calgary, that could be 3 different countries.
That's true. Yeah.
I technically grew up. I was born in Lethbridge.
Oh, okay.
I did French immersion in Lethbridge. But I also had a reason to do French immersion, right? I wanted to be able to speak to my family.
Right.
So
I guess I'm super daft. In Switzerland, they speak French.
Oh, okay. So Switzerland technically has 4 national languages.
Right, because I thought there was... Oh,
yeah,
sorry.
Yeah, no, you're right. It's German, then it's French, then it's Italian, and then there's this other language called Romanche, which I think the best way I can explain it is it sounds kind of like they're speaking German, and then suddenly they'll drop an Italian vowel.
Oh.
So I kind of think of it as what happens when the Germans and the Italians meet in the mountains. You get Romanche. And I'm sorry if I offended anyone, but it's beautiful language.
Yeah.
I'm not great with the German, and I'm not great with the Italian.
Yeah.
So when combined, it's not really a combination, but it's the best way to explain it.
Yeah.
I'm really lost, but it's really pretty to listen to.
But so when you were there, though, and you speak the French, then a lot of people speak French because it's another recognized language.
Yes, and then Geneva itself is in a canton, I think province, that mostly speaks French, the primary there. But Switzerland also has so many English speakers that when my husband goes, who only speaks English,
right,
he had no problems. It doesn't matter where he's going. They'll say, oh, and when you hear your accent and you're wearing your maple leaf, they're like, oh, you're not one of those rude people. We're good.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. Oh, cool. So where did you get this interest in medieval times and reenactment and sewing your own clothes?
Okay, well, it goes I've always loved costuming. I found a coil-bound notebook from the 2nd grade where I had been drawing costumes.
Oh, really?
I had fairy costumes, fancy stuff that I'm like, could I even have made that? And the thing is, I know I did for my Barbies and stuff like that.
Oh.
I know that I did that. And then I don't remember when it was, but when Madonna did her Vogue on one of the award show,
Yeah.
she wore like the Marie Antoinette French outfit.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
And that costume, like that was like fundamental for me of like, that's so fancy, I want to make
So this is because of Madonna.
This is because of Madonna. Yeah. She wore that and I'm just like, oh. And then I started really paying attention to all the movies that came out. And yeah, movies aren't a really great guide for what is historical and appropriate. They're artist renditions of a period. That's all you need to know. That's what the artist thought it would be.
Yeah.
But it was an amazing thing. And then when I went to university, there was a medieval group there that was called the Society for Creative Anachronism.
Oh.
And they were a group that's like, if it's medieval-ish and Renaissance-ish and you try, come and join us.
Yeah.
And that was kind of where I started. And then Ever After came out that year. I just dated myself. You know, that's when I started looking at those costumes, and that's what inspired some of my Italian Ren clothing that I had made. So my first outfit that I made was, I was in, I think it was my second semester, and I was taking, I think it was like an intro to drama class that I'm like, I could take for the sake of taking.
Yeah.
And we're like, oh,
I took that one too.
Yeah, and they're just like, oh, well, we're gonna do, and I was in the group that chose Shakespeare for their thing.
Oh.
So at that point, I made an outfit to do it. Everyone else is like, what are you doing? And I'm like, so I knew at that point I was a little bit hooked, but I also had a reason to make it too, because I could also wear it to that other group. So I had like double the reason.
And not obviously everyone isn't, but is it really common that in those groups, because you're not finding the clothing, of course, down at your local shop, pretty much, are there a lot of people that make their own, or do most people get them made?
So back in the day, because there's what was and there's what is now.
Right.
Back in the day, you hoped you could find something at a thrift store that kind of passed, or you learned to sew, or you became really good friends with someone who could sew.
Right.
And I have been lucky. I have actually been sewing thanks to good old junior high and home ec class. I've been sewing since I was 16. Oh,
wow.
Am I particularly amazing? No, I'm no seamstress.
Yeah.
I sew. I'm not a seamstress. I'm not a tailor. Like, there's levels here, and I'm not that.
Yeah.
I can tell you a lot of ways to do something wrong. Because I have over 20 years of experience doing that now.
You know what not to do, especially.
Yeah, and it's like, you can do that, but you're not going to like yourself.
Yeah.
So
right from the beginning of, like, let's say when you're in university, was it really important that you stay really accurate as well? Or this first foyer, it was more about making something work and...
Oh, no, I made a lot of gowns work.
Right.
I knew the basics of sewing, and it didn't really matter to me it was, I believe the term that some people are using is historically adequate. and honestly, I don't think I would have even given myself
about you that is adequate. Like, you would only describe as adequate.
I don't even think I would have given myself that label back then either, because I wasn't really looking into the history of it. I wasn't looking at pictures of, what things should look like.
Right.
I was going based on movies and these pictures that I think are medieval. Yeah. This is what I'm building. And I mean, and then the internet and online collections. Yeah. So back then, you don't really, it's not easy unless if you have someone who happens to have like one of those really great historically based books.
Yeah.
How are you gonna know?
Yeah. Yeah.
How is it? I mean, I had access to the library, but unless if you knew exactly this time period, I'm looking at this, and the university helped me a lot with learning how to research.
Right. Yeah.
And my degree isn't anything related to
what
history.
What is your degree in?
I have a Bachelor of Science in Neuroscience.
Oh, there you go.
Related, but I am really good at research.
Right.
I can look at something and like track back the sources and decide whether or not, go back and decide why they decided this versus this.
Which is something, when I was looking what you're doing, it was something that really impressed me, because you're doing a ton of research. So not only are you finding sort of what's going on then? But like all this back research that you do, is totally impressive. And I was looking at the project that you're, sort of the big project that you're starting now, and the research you're doing for that is crazy.
Well,
hey?
I mean, I think the difference is I have access to that information now.
Yeah.
There are other groups there that now, because internet, I'm talking like the internet is like this new thing, and it's not. But we're actually sharing information now. Before, when I first started, it felt like I have the information and I'm not sharing it. It really felt like a hoarding of information. I have it, but unless if you're a member of my secret cabal, I'm not sharing it with you.
Yeah.
And that, I hate that.
Yeah.
It's like when you teach something, I remember back in the day, for a while, I thought when I taught somebody and then they went and made it their own and all that, I had this initial, oh my goodness, they're copying me. And I'm like, but they're not. They're sharing the information, which is like the entire point for me.
Right.
So,
yeah. Speaking, let's just, let's talk about with what you're wearing. Can you, people who are watching us on YouTube are going to get to see what you're wearing, but can you kind of describe what you're wearing, what era it's from?
Sure. I am a huge fan of the 15th century. This is just a very simple front lace dress. I know it's probably a little bit fancier than it was back in the day because I used a lot of the gores. I kind of made it in a way that, even though I'm wearing purple, which was a more expensive color, was still a color, like if it's not the deep purple.
Which is a royal type color, right?
This stuff would have been expensive.
Okay.
Versus this was probably...
So that darker velvety color is...
Yeah, this darker, like the darker, the truer the shade, the richer you probably were.
Oh, because it took so much dye. Hey?
You probably had to do a couple of dips. I'm newer at natural dyeing, which is one of the things I want to do.
Yeah.
But this was probably like a second or third after. Like this is the leftovers, and the dyer's like, sweet. Now that I've got this person to pay for my first expensive batch.
Right.
This is what's left.
Right.
So even though it's purple. It is
a lighter.
Yeah, I'm not wearing I'm definitely a working class person in this outfit. I know this is a fancy thing, but I mean, you can have the odd thing like that. I am actually wearing proper. Don't wreck the mic.
Yeah, bring them up so we can see.
I'm actually wearing my proper undergarments.
And so the proper footwear then are sort of these leather little booties, lace-up booties.
And there isn't a lot of evidence that shoes were gendered so much back then.
Oh.
So,
which makes sense maybe because you've got that ease of pattern, right? Just bigger or smaller.
Just bigger or smaller.
Yeah.
I mean, a couple of straps, a couple of buckles, and you're good to go. I mean, I have some shoes that are multiple buckles that wrap around that if I know I'm going to be running around or anything like that.
And what about these sleeves that you put on? So you've pinned them on.
Yeah, careful if you see someone wearing this outfit. They got pins.
Yeah, that's right.
So you would have no worries. To stay warm, you would have had sleeves. Now you could make a garment with the matching sleeves all the way down, and they did that. But the advantage here is I'm showing that I can afford some slightly more expensive, darker fabric, and I have it in wool. So if it's cold outside, like it is right now, it's snowing.
Was wool more expensive then?
See that?
Or I mean, I guess you don't know all the price ranges, but I mean,
yes, we kind of do because we actually have access to the scrolls. And after the 14th century, they started writing a lot more stuff down.
Yeah.
I mean, we knew what the average price for bread was. We knew what the average price to go get some ale was. Like, we know that, and we knew what the average worker got paid. And it started getting wickedly structured by, the high to late Middle Ages. So we knew that. Wool, it depends where you are.
Right.
I mean, fabric was still expensive. It was still someone spinning the flax or the wool or the fleece into a thread, then someone had to weave it, then someone had to either choose to dye it at that point or construct it.
Right.
So
right.
The other advantage to this is if you could get your hands on, if you knew someone and you could get your hands on the silk, this is the time to, this is where you want to put it.
A little fancy arm.
Or a little pouch, like a lot of ladies' pouches that you find are like kind of smaller.
Yeah.
Definitely no room for a cell phone in there.
So, and you're layered. So is it a fairly, did they sort of just wear like a cotton underdress and then another prettier sort of cotton?
Most of your underclothing at this point is going to be linen, and it's either going to be, you're going to hope for a natural-ish color linen, which linen could go naturally anywhere from like a grayish tone to a very creamy tone. Like it varies depending on where you get it. A linen under something was foundational, and pretty much until you start getting a little bit later and towards the Renaissance, what a woman wore and what a man wore is pretty similar. The only difference usually is in the length, because men's tunics and everything was usually below their knees anyway.
Okay.
And in the summer, there's a lot of evidence that women wore shorter, like, undergarments underneath their overgarments.
Right.
And linen is amazing. It's actually one of the reasons why I chose that for my project. You know, the part of the manuscript I'm looking at is about linen clothing and the health benefits of it and the dangers of it. And
what are the dangers? That sounds so sexy.
So, they used to think that linen prevented you from sweating.
Oh, okay.
They didn't quite realize the wicking was happening. Linen is amazing.
Yeah.
If you want to choose, I mean, it's not the cheapest. Cotton's probably a better thing to start on if you're gonna like just practice sewing and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But linen is one of those things that if you're just gonna like, I want to make myself a dress, get out of linen.
Really?
It's wrinkly. Yeah, it is wrinkly, but it's just it's so great. It will keep you. It will wick things away, and it just best underlayer ever.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh, and that, I wonder if that is something that they cultivated, knowing that between that and cotton, because cotton would have been there at the same time as linen, right?
So cotton does exist at the same time as linen, and we know that it existed in Europe because we have a lot of evidence of it in sales, in tents, and all that. But what I'm wondering, if there wasn't a socio-economic reason why cotton wasn't a little bit more prevalent in the Middle Ages. We know in Italy and we know in Spain that there was actually finer cotton, and we know Egyptian cotton was a thing, right?
Right.
You know, it was there, and we know that, you know, in Aleppo, there's amazing cotton mills there. But, poor place, I mean, they had a pretty bad incident there. But we also know that while it could come, flax has been around just as long, and whether or not the cotton plant that we know is actually like how genetically similar is it? And we don't actually know that.
That's so true.
We know that it did get mixed, but there is also a big rule, like, remember, religion is a thing. Remember the whole thing against mixed fibers? Don't wear mixed, you know, there's religious doctrine against mixing fibers.
Oh, really?
And part of us wonder if that was more something that got enforced because the flax people didn't want the cotton people in on their turf. So there's a bit of socioeconomic things there. And I also wonder if cotton wasn't used necessarily for some of the poorer people.
Right.
Because there's a lot of evidence that we know the cotton's there. I mean, but we also know that it's not a thing that a lot of people wore, because like when we get to Queen Elizabeth I, she only has one cotton under thing.
Oh, really?
And why, like, at that point people are sailing oceans and stuff like that. So why?
Yeah.
And the answer is probably there. I just haven't done enough research. And honestly, now that I know linen, forget cotton.
And your bonnet that you're wearing,
it's linen too.
I could see it was linen.
The other thing about it is it's probably whiter than it really should be. When I made it, I didn't realize, like, to bleach linen is something that would have been a little bit more complicated. I mean, I'm not sure versus it probably would have been a natural one. That said, all the veils that you see on women of all the time period, it's always white. So they must have done something. And we know that they stiffen things a little bit too. So
And I notice on the back, which maybe it must be protective, right? Maybe I'll take a picture after and we can put that on the video after, because it's kind of neat the way it's drawn in, and that keeps it on. Oh,
that's a cheat.
Okay.
That's something that I added in.
Good call. It looks
yeah.
like it would make it comfortable and stay on.
Yeah,
right?
no, it one of the reasons why I did this one, I have one that I tie on and then I put the knot here and fold it back.
Oh, okay.
Because this thing's also great, so if the weather's not so great,
right,
you can actually wear it a little bit
and you've got your face. Yeah.
Yeah, it's just it's one that you see a lot in the Flemish areas. And there's a lot of questions about how it was done, because some people thought it was like done in a kind of a square piece with kind of like a wrap thing similar to that of a turban.
Right.
Whether or not it was just a kerchief that had been tied, but the wing thing, that's fashion right now.
Oh, that's just fashion.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, if I wanted to get fashionable and if I was a rich person, I should pluck my hairline back to like here.
Oh, wow.
And then I should also be finding ways to like get rid of my eyebrows. Like there's
that's why you see the Flemish painters. Right. When I think back to
it was a thing. And if you look at those, I like the Burgundian time period, where they're in power, they're taking power from the French, and you know, Steele and Joan of Arc, they're hateful and wonderful. And though I've got to say, everyone keeps doing all of these beautiful movies and everything about the Italian city-states and the Borgias and everything, and I'm like, oh, look at the Burgundians. They're equally salacious.
Oh, is that right?
Just go look at them. They've done so much stuff. Please do it.
So have you done any costumes from that era? Does that interest you?
Well, one of the outfits that I wanted to wear, because the reason I chose Germany.
Era, I guess.
Oh, no, I get it.
Okay.
Because Germany, you know, like you've got Germany and then you've got France, and then the Burgundians are kind of there. They're kind of all hanging out with each other.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of influence on there. Technically, this was my version of a tighter fitted. I actually wore this for a Lethbridge Living photo shoot.
And this hat goes with it?
Yep.
Yeah. What we're looking at is a beautiful, beautiful purple. This has ornament on it.
Yeah.
So with having sort of this ornament and this heavy, beautiful material, as you said, this is something more a rich person would wear.
When you first start into costuming, you're not really interested in wearing what regular people wear. You want to wear the fancy stuff, right? My first costume that I had made for that first thing in drama was a man-made fiber, but it was a brocade. It was like a light blue and like I'm going to say cream brocade.
Oh, beautiful.
And it was really pretty, and I found it in the cheap section, and I just bought a whole bunch of it, and I was so fancy. And then as I go along, I am way more interested in what did regular people wear?
Right.
What did the common person wear?
Yeah.
So.
Well, and it was really interesting on I think it's your latest YouTube video, where you talk about, looking and trying to find the costume you want to make and going through all these different manuscripts that are online now, like you were saying.
Thank goodness.
Yeah, so being able to go through those, and it just seemed like such a process, like a wonderful process, but such a process because you really, really are researching within that, aren't you? And and so what sort of, is there an event that you're gonna go to that you want to have this dress for? Is it something that's a personal?
So my original intention was to start trying to participate. Every once in a while I'd see people do a manuscript challenge where they go, I'm gonna copy this picture, and then I thought about it. I'm like, well, I could just try and fit in the picture, but I could also, I'm trying to understand, why did they bother to paint that picture?
Right.
And in this particular manuscript, which I'm probably going to mispronounce again, the Tequinum Sanitatis, or the Tables of Health. I could be wrong. My Latin sucks. They basically talk about all these different things that you need to know to be healthy.
Oh, okay.
Because they really believed in hot and cold and dry and moist, and if something was wrong, it's because something of that was out of balance.
Oh.
Yeah. So so when looking at that kind of manuscript, I was really enthralled in it because I have a science background. So the idea that I found something that was kind of a secular textbook about health, I was drawn in, because not only is there, here's a picture, but here's why it's important. They talk about, make sure you have this food and don't mix it with this food because of this danger. And then even the clothing, they have one on the one that exists in every single one of the books back to the 11th century is wool and linen clothing, and what's good about them and what's bad about them. Oh. And then when you get a little bit later, they added an extra panel about silk clothing. Because, yeah.
It's funny when you were saying that, it sort of reminded me of, I guess you can't help it, but the yin and yang, right? Which would have been before that, because we're talking about Eastern religions. So it almost sounds like it might be influenced by
absolutely it absolutely is, because if you actually see the original person that they painted it off of, he's Arab. This definitely is something that probably went all the way back to Constantinople. And you got to remember especially when we're talking about we have the early Middle Ages, the High Middle Ages, and the Late Middle Ages. And for a while there, in the early part, Europe is a little bit cut off for a little bit, but then we started going to not Europe. I don't know how to say it. Everyone's
started going to not Europe.
I mean, they started the Crusades and started saying, "This is mine."
Yeah.
I mean, if anything, I find that time history, like, there's a lot of stuff that happened during the Crusades. For example, people would go to the Crusades, and it would just be, Joe Schmo from Village A, and they would go and loot from the mosques. So suddenly, they had access to brocade silk.
Right.
And since, his wife back home is probably never going to see him again, I'm going to send it back home. And then that's why we have sumptuary laws that suddenly appear, rules about who could wear what and when, because suddenly these not status people have access to status things.
Right.
Yeah.
Oh.
I mean, even some of our saints are shrouded in things that are covered in Muslim inscriptions. Because they stole it.
Yeah.
Stealing is not a current thing. It's...
And stealing of culture.
Yeah, I mean... Yeah. I mean, if you go back to the early Middle Ages, I refuse to call them the Dark Ages. Refuse.
Why?
Because they weren't. Just because Rome went away doesn't mean that these amazing cultures didn't happen.
Right.
But if you look at the Vikings, and I roll my eyes when I call it that, because they're not just one culture. There's whatever. When they started traveling, they weren't just seeing other white people. Right. We have evidence of them contacting the Mongols. We have evidence of them making it all the way over to Canada. So let's incite some stuff. They weren't this master race. So if you want to come in here and be a Nazi, bring it. I'm Swiss. I'll happily. Swiss Canadian. Come smack down. Don't bring no Nazi crap to me.
Yeah.
Yeah. Not here.
Oh, cool.
Sorry. Bring it.
The look on your face.
Yeah.
It's like, yeah.
But that's actually one thing you have to be careful when you go into some of the history, because a lot of the stuff that people think about the Middle Ages is based on what Victorians wrote down.
Or what we see on movies.
Yes, which is primarily based on what the Victorians wrote. Oh, okay. Versus now that we have access to actual, court rules and censuses, there's a lot of information there that, I mean, even when they're starting to look at Viking graves and they're going, oh, this was a man, and they're like, there's, female mitochondrial DNA in here,
Yeah.
Sorry, that fighter was a girl.
Yeah.
Hate to break it to you.
Yeah. Which again shows a shift in culture too then, right?
Yeah.
Like
absolutely.
So many of the cultures, once they come into contact with others, and women, it seems to go down in a lot of different cultures.
Well, there's this wax and wane that happens because, depending on the early Middle Ages, women really were in charge of the money in the home, and like not in the you're in charge of home. They just
That's just, yeah.
that's just, and then the Black Plague. Oh man, I can't believe I'm talking about a plague. You know, anytime there's strife in human existence,
Yeah.
Women's power goes up. So after the Black Plague, all these workers die
Right.
because we don't care about the regular working people.
Yeah, right.
Mm.
Gee, really? Yeah. Boy, that's...
So nothing changes.
Yeah. Parallel.
I know. But then women have to work. And, you know, while they're not necessarily getting paid the same amount, suddenly we see women working outside of home.
Right.
And, like, especially in the 14th century, women are suddenly being allowed to go into guilds.
Oh.
And it's not necessarily always one just because their husband's there or their dad was there. There are some working places that we subscribe to women, like weaving and spinning. Expect that to be. And then by the time 15th century comes around and the population is starting to come back up, they start getting told, you know, back to home with you.
Yeah.
Which kind of
Like
reminds
in
me.
the 50s.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. Right after like Second World War and everything.
It's like you have
We
no job
don't
now.
change.
Yeah, I'm sure it'll happen.
Yeah.
Sure it'll.
Yeah, we don't change.
Unfortunately, no.
Yeah.
Yeah. So why is it, I'm thinking it's sort of the wonderful research geekiness of you that needs to also, like, so when we were talking about a piece that you made for your husband.
Yep.
And how you hand stitched the entire thing.
Yep.
One reason being you said it's more durable, which is interesting to me, because for some reason in my mind, I'm assuming that a sewing machine is, so it must be the way you sew.
So there's a lot of different types of stitches. If you do, I'm just going to say, if you know how to do a proper back stitch,
Yeah.
that thing will outsurvive a machine straight stitch any day of the week. It just will.
Yeah.
And you've got to think about it, that the average person didn't have access to the crazy fast fashion crap that we have now.
Right.
Where it has to be,
Yeah, no
you know,
fast food fashion. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. They had to make their outfits last. I mean, even when you're getting into the Victorian ages, you know, they might have restyled their clothing and redone them, but they made them to last.
Right.
And, you know, that's when sewing machines were just starting.
Right.
So, I know when I made his, I mean, I had to learn how to fell seams.
Okay, and what does that mean?
That's making the seam lie flat in a way so it's still protected.
Oh, wow. My goodness.
And then how you do it changes depending on where you want it to be. I wanted this back seam. Thank goodness for people online teaching me how to do this stuff.
It's fascinating online. Like literally almost anything you want to know, you can look it up. And which is why I also appreciate on yours is you're sharing your knowledge too.
Oh yeah,
right?
I'm gonna share all the links that I have. Versus you can see that I kind of double seam down the back there. Versus this one, I did a kind of a roll, and the reason why is I wanted this seam.
Yeah.
This seam's gonna be kind of bagged in a certain way, and it's gonna cause the structure to last a certain way.
Okay.
When he wears it. Versus this is gonna want to lie, like this is gonna kind of force it out a bit. Versus this is gonna keep everything lying nice and flat.
So stitches are also just fashionable, which I mean, I guess we kind of know with the gathering we see in different things, but I'm not a sewer, so to me this is sort of fascinating by the way you're doing your stitches.
Yes.
So not just even the cuts, but your actual stitches.
That you're getting into tailoring at that point. Right. Those are the people that will make sure your cuff stays up. That's the people that, you know, man, tailors are magicians. They're just amazing. Yeah. And then you have to make sure when you're sewing your buttonholes that you're doing it in a way. My spouse is hard on his clothes because he likes going out and doing things. I actually did it all in a silk because silk thread is just stronger than any poly thing that you're going to get. And it's just it's made for that. And then, you know, made the buttons, which
and would they
turn
have
out
covered buttons then?
Oh, these
They
aren't
must
covered.
have.
These aren't covered. These
What
are
are they?
literally just a piece of linen. It was a circular piece of linen
Oh.
that you draw in and then you draw in again and you just like squeeze it. There's nothing in there. It's just linen.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay.
And then you just tie it on. A couple of ways that I did this could have been done a little bit better. Now that I found a book that actually shows me some of the stuff from this time period that could have made it a little bit better. But
Yeah.
I'll tell
it's
you.
wonderful though, because your husband is a very tall man, and so to try and to make something like this for him has got to be a.
Yeah, and I mean, it was also time that I was going to be away from him for a while, so it was kind of a really nice thing to be able to think about him while I'm working on it.
Oh,
Like,
okay.
I miss you, I'm making you something because I
you
love
mean
you.
you guys were literally apart?
Yeah, I was actually on Vancouver Island for 2 weeks. And I'm like, well, I'm just going to sit here and sew a thing.
Nice.
So that's what I did during that time. The other danger of all these sources online is there are fast fashion historical people out there now that you want to buy a Viking outfit, a general Viking outfit with a drinking horn, and
yeah.
there's so much stuff that you're like, are there horns on that helmet?
And then you have those guys that wear the braids, and they're they're just.
There is a guy on YouTube called the Welsh Viking, and if you ever want the most delicious shade on what is not Viking, he's kind of like my RuPaul of Viking wear, and I'm like, yes, please keep going, Jimmy. I love you.
We'll have to look him up. So you have quite a bit of social media. You have your YouTube, and on your YouTube you share a lot of practical things, how-tos, I guess, for lack of a better word, as well as kind of what you're doing. And you're on Pinterest, which I was looking at your Pinterest. I was like, oh my God, I could get lost in here.
My Pinterest, I shifted from my personal Pinterest over to everything.
You're gonna have to check out this Pinterest because it's full. It's full of almost everything that you didn't know you wanted, but now are fascinated with. That's what happened to me.
It's the tangent brain. If I can't figure out how to do something, I will go on Pinterest, even though it's kind of a lie. Because a lot of Pinterest things link back to other Pinterest things instead of the person that you want to credit. Sorry, mind I hate that it steals from people.
Yeah.
Like, I want to credit the person. It's one of the reasons why, and I have links there. It's important that it links back to the manuscript that it came from.
Right.
But I find Pinterest is also fantastic for just making a mood board or an idea board and just and then throw a bunch of stuff on there, and then you can look at it and go,
and now you
this
can
is
choose
crap.
I
believe I even have a Pinterest board of, sorry, not medieval. That was one I shared with a friend. I mean, I love fantasy stuff.
Yeah.
I mean, I started with fairies.
Yeah.
I love fantasy stuff, but just don't say, this is historically accurate.
Right.
It just say, I had some fun with this. It was my artistic rendition of what I think it should be.
Yeah.
Do it!
Yeah.
There's nothing wrong with that. Just don't lie about it.
Yeah.
Don't lead people down the primrose path.
Primrose path.
Well, when I first started, I got sucked in by a lot of the Victorian drawings of what medieval were. A lot of the outfits I made were based on like the Waterhouse paintings or Keats or you jerks. Like, I just had no idea.
Yeah.
I totally went the wrong way. But there's a lot of romanticism. Like, there was a revival of what the Middle Ages in that time period. There's like, oh, it was so much better, and then we get a lot of ideas. Like, for example, one of the ideas that I get is, it looks really rough. So, it's totally like Middle Ages. I'm like, no, like, it's like not finishing your hems. You spent a lot of time on that clothes. They would not have like, a ratty hem. Like, they just wouldn't have done that. It took time and money to make your outfit. Ain't gonna do it.
Yeah. Although, once you're in there getting dirty and whatever, wouldn't that maybe be something that would happen? Or do you think by the time they took to make those clothes, there's going to be that upkeep of the clothes too?
Well, there's also going to be your family.
Freaking hard, right?
Yes, they do. But if you also look at a lot of the pictures of the people in the field, they're not wearing the pretty over stuff. a lot of pictures of people working in the field are wearing their linen underclothes and like their pants rolled
Trying
down.
to be cool.
Yeah, be cool. And that's the part that, you know, if they're going to get worn out, they washed it a lot. I mean, it's like people who believe, oh, people in the Middle Ages bathed so rarely. I'm like, no.
That's what I thought.
Yeah, no, but
So
here, think about it. If you're going to be stuck working with a bunch of people, do you really want them to stink?
Well, that's what I thought it was
Yeah.
like, though. I thought
Yeah.
maybe you must just
But
get
that's what
accustomed to it.
But that's what a lot of the movies would have you
Yeah,
believe,
yeah,
too. But,
yeah.
I mean, if you start looking at it, there's communal bathhouses, so...
Oh, yeah.
If that's a thing, then clearly being clean, like, did you have a shower every day? No.
Yeah.
But...
Yeah.
They knew what soap was. They knew how to keep things clean. They kept their hair covered, you know,
Which is gonna,
there are religious reasons, but I can tell you, you know, you can't tell whether or not I have toque underneath this hat.
Right.
Right?
Well, speaking of religions, were there a lot of different religions? What you wore, would those in any way indicate what religion maybe you were, or if you're religious or not?
So a lot of the pictures that you see are going to be hyper-focused on the Christianity of the time. But we also know that, you know, there were people of color in the Middle Ages. And they weren't always Christian either. You can actually...
Were they slaves?
Not all of them, no.
No.
I mean, there's...
Because you're in Europe, right?
I'm going to actually go and say, if you want a really good starting place without going down the rabbit hole, the Lethbridge Medieval Club, which I'm a member, did a great article, I think it was last year in February, about all the black faces in the Middle Ages that weren't slaves.
Oh, really?
I mean, even in earlier periods...
Very apropos with it being Black History Month. That would be a great hole to
Instagram is amazing for that one, too.
Yeah.
Actually, there's one Instagrammer. Her name is, oh man, I know her as Gigi. I think she's the Belladonna History. If you want to see some pretty stuff, oh my God, look at her stuff. So pretty. And then the other one is one of the other people that I've been learning. She is of Jewish ancestry, and she actually looked and saw that the veils, like, there's a type of veil that you could see if it had like these blue bands on the end. Apparently that was a symbol that you were Jewish.
Oh.
So there's a lot of hidden stuff that in there that we don't know. I mean, there's even meaning in certain clothing.
Why would you want to? What do you think? Like, do you think it was Jewish people they wanted that to be there, or was that a...
I'm going to say that I don't actually have enough knowledge for this.
Yeah.
I know in many cases, I mean, they got blamed for the Black Plague, for crying out loud.
Really?
Oh, yeah. In certain places, yes.
Oh, really?
So there are some places that force you to identify yourself, which I don't want to go down that hole because it gets me angry.
It is
but there are some places that we just know that, you know, if you're going to go down to the southern parts of France and Italy and Spain, there's going to be Muslim people there.
Right, of course.
Yeah. So it's some of identification. But there's also other sumptuary laws where they force you to wear certain things. I just read a book called The Secret Sex Lives of Medieval Women. Oh my God, it's so good.
Yeah.
But they talked about, you know, prostitution has always been a thing.
Yeah.
Always been a thing.
Yeah.
And depending on what city and everything, the rules change. I mean, London paid for its prostitutes to live in certain places.
Oh.
There are places in France that if you're a prostitute, you better wear a yellow hood or striped hood. And depending on where you are, like, stripes can mean you're treasonous, or you're a prostitute, or, you know, we're going to say you weren't of great virtue. So striped clothing can actually, depending on the place and the time period, mean that you're not trustworthy.
The Scarlet Letter?
Yeah, well, I kind of think of it in the terms of, you know how, like, later on we see the horizontal stripe versus vertical stripe. We see that kind of even into punk culture. I think of like the Ramones with their striped shirts.
Oh,
and then,
yeah.
Then I think of jailbirds, where, you know, we typically think of people in jail wearing the black and white stripes.
Right.
I wonder if that doesn't
come from...
if we don't have an idea of that from somewhere.
Right.
That said, that could be an art history, like, dissertation. So someone do it.
Sounds like you need to do a few more dissertations.
I have a bachelor's. I ain't that smart.
So this latest project that you're working on,
Yep.
Which people will make sure they have the YouTube link where you kind of introduce what you're doing, and then also unpackaging the silk brocade. And I'm not even an unpackaged kind of watch girl, but oh my God, your joy, your literal joy. And then you're like, oh, I should have gloves. Oh, I should have gloves doing this. Oh no. Okay. Little interlude while you go and get gloves. Oh my God, that made me laugh so much, but it was gorgeous.
Yeah.
And is it for this new project?
It's actually not, because the manuscript that I chose, she is probably just a regular, like the people in that picture, probably just regular guild workers.
Right.
I don't think any of them would have been able to afford silk brocade.
Right.
What I am making myself is I'm making myself some sleeves. And I am going to make myself a little pouch.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I really honestly, it's almost the same price as wool broadcloth right now. The silk brocade is almost the same price as wool broadcloth right now.
Okay, again, I don't know. So is
wool broadcloth. So what you don't want, they didn't do knit wool.
Okay.
Like knitting is, did they do it? Yes, we have pictures of people knitting. Did they make knit outfits? I don't have any evidence of that. Could they have made we know that they made like little cushions and stuff like that. We have evidence of knitting there. But the weave is definitely like over, under. You want some good stuff, look at the Lethbridge Weavers Guild. Man, those ladies they're so amazing. They're so helpful for like understanding things. And there's a lot of YouTube tutorials of what is the different weave. Yeah. So a lot of like just a plain tabby weave where it's just over, under.
Yeah.
A lot of that is what people would have had. So that's what you're hoping for when you find your linen and your wool. I mean, it's fun to find complex woven things, but they didn't always have that. And the looms are only so big. And so when brocade became a long thing where it's like the fancy patterns and everything, like that stuff's expensive. And think about how expensive it would be back then to have like a woven wool or linen, depending on where you are. It will change prices there. Yeah. Versus now you're talking silk, and then silk production, probably had to come down through Italy, and like we're almost talking like this, along the Spice Road and everything like that. Yeah. Until we started having actual silk production in France, which isn't until like almost the end of the Middle Ages.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So this is my Lamborghini. Like I kind of think of a brocaded outfit as, this is my Ferrari.
Really?
Yeah. This is their flex.
Right.
This is the look at me.
Yeah.
Versus to have the ironic thing is, now that historical stuff is becoming popular again and reproduction things are getting popular again, the place where I look at so many places online to see who has what. But the place where I got that silk brocade, when they had that and I was able to pre-purchase it before they made it, it was same price per meter as like my wool is for a future project that I'm making. Oh. Yeah, and it's just, that's insane to me that something that is silk brocade. Yeah. And just wool is not an easy thing to get your hands on right now anymore. The mills are just shutting down, even before COVID. Well, because who wants to pay for something made of quality when they can have something plastic from who knows where? Yeah. No, unfortunately, no disrespectful to the place where they are, but it's if you want to have a good laugh, anyone who's been sewing for a really long time should take a look at this group called Can You Sew This For Me? And it's all about all these people that are like, I'll give you $50 to sew me, and then they'll like throw a Cinderella gown. I'm like, I'm not going to sew anything for you. I will happily give you links to videos. I will happily like even show you like, try this. I'm not going to ever do that for you. Oh yeah, no, especially for $50. Oh my God. Well, people just don't have any idea. Why can't you? I just want a costume. It's like Belle from, when she's just being a peasant. Can't you just do that for me for $50? I'll give you the material. Oh my goodness. I can't be here.
Yeah. No, you have to. Well, and the thing is too, the quality that you're doing, right? I mean, that's what's important to you.
Yeah.
So when, with this latest project, when you're going and you're looking through and you're researching to find, and see, she just unpinned her arms because she's warm, because
Problem solved.
I'm cold.
Oh,
And
you're allowed to be warm. Yeah.
But so that's super cool. I think I just need those in my life. Like, I just want to wear those for fashion.
I mean, think about these. Are they really that different than like spats?
Leg warmers?
Yeah, they're kind of like, think of them almost as spats. Like, I mean, I like the idea. And to quote a very awesome person, sleeves are bullshit. And making them and wearing them. I'm not a fan of sleeves. I mean, linen is amazing, so I'm good.
Well, I'm a fan of sleeves because I'm not a fan really of my arms as much.
What?
I'm embracing them now, but I'm not all my life. Like, even when I was a thin girl, for some reason, I've
never been one.
Yeah. So I just did not like my arms. So I'm the last few years, I'm getting my strength up and just wearing them. I'm getting them tattooed. That helps. But anyways, so I like sleeves. And so when I see things like this, where it's not a full sweater, but it's like a sleeve, then that's kind of enticing, because it's,
well, you just give yourself a little cap sleeve, and then you're just,
and then just,
the only thing is, maybe use a fancy safety pin, because, like, I'm pretty sure the TSA would not like this.
You don't think so? Yeah.
I mean, I got in trouble for bringing knitting needles on a flight once. They took, it was like right after 9/11 and everything like that. So they took it away.
I had a teeny weeny little jackknife. Little jackknife that Paul gave me. Wood and brass and just the most beautiful little thing.
Did they let you ship it home?
And it was, well, I didn't have an envelope. I didn't have anything. And my flight was leaving, right? Yeah. And so he's like, do you have a stamped envelope you can give me? I'm like, I didn't know I was going to have to. In fact, I didn't know it was in there. Yeah. I don't know why I'm coming to this story.
No, but that's exactly what happens. I've lost really nice Swiss Army knives that way too.
Yeah, I totally. I should almost, knowing me and how I am, I should just carry around envelopes that have my stamps and whatever, because I was really sad to lose that one. But anyways, that's a whole other thing. So, but what I was mentioning was, when you're going through and you're looking through all these manuscripts, and I saw you chose what you want to do. Okay, so it's not like you can go to McCall's and find their pattern for making it. So how the heck do you start?
Well, I cheated by picking a pattern from a time period I'm familiar with. Yeah. So there's actually a lot of costumers out there that have their information on there and where their sources are. Yeah. But the thing is, back then there wasn't a paper pattern for them to make things from.
Right. What they used,
they draped
themselves?
They draped. Yeah. You went in and you got draped. Would they have something that maybe was close to your size? Yeah. Absolutely. There's a really great, what's their name? Popula Urbanum. She did a really great tutorial on how to do like a really simple hood and how to drape it. And she's like, this is how it is. So there's a lot of costumers and YouTubers out there that will show you how they did the drape method. I am probably going to do something similar, but I'm going to also use a mock-up and cheat a little bit there, because if this garment is eventually something I'm hoping to dye with woad or indigo, I am probably going to want to get it done sooner rather than later. I just checked yesterday, because I didn't think about checking sooner, the Canadian supplier that I would normally use for woad, they're out. Oh. Because they do it in a sustainable way. I like Maywa a lot. But indigo, I think I still have some indigo left over, so maybe I'll use that.
So when you say that, do you construct the garment first and then dye it?
Yes. And the reason, are you hoping for sadness? You can have some weird spots if you dye it funny. You can. You just redip it and do it again and get a slightly darker color if you need to. Yeah. I'm newer to natural dyes. I used to just good old Rit dye. Right. My natural dye experiments that I have used have worked out really well. You want to a really easy one, grab yourself some yellow onion skins, and you will see the golden yellow that you can get out of that.
Oh, really?
Yeah, you like make a tea, take all the stuff out, and then dip it all in there. Even if you don't do the prep mordant, you'll still get a really yellow, pretty yellow.
And what are you going to use to do your purple?
Well, I'm gonna,
indigo.
Indigo, yeah. So I'm going to get a blue. And depending on the dip, indigo is denim.
Right.
Yeah, it's denim. So I want kind of more of a flax flower kind of color, so a lighter one.
Yeah,
so I just don't put it in there as long.
Yeah.
Hopefully. I mean, if it goes darker, it's fine. If it goes lighter, it's fine. It is what it is, and that's part of the experiment.
Mm-hmm.
And then I was also reading on this one website, because you can't just put it in water. You have to like add a bunch of stuff to the water to get the indigo to actually accept into the water. And I'm very grateful that, one, I have a little bit of a chemistry background, and two, I know people really good at chemistry.
I was going to say, and you have.
I have
a friend who's.
I have a Chris Fisher, chemistry department at the University of Lethbridge, who can ensure that I don't poison myself while doing this. Because natural dyes. You know what also is natural? Arsenic. Uranium. It doesn't mean it's safe.
Well, and I was watching. What was I watching? Oh, The Outlander. And so they were saying, someone's like, no, I gave him lead. I don't know why he's dying.
Oh, mercury.
Mercury.
It's natural.
That's what it was. Not lead, mercury. Yeah, exactly.
Oh, I get it. I watch historical shows all the time too. Just understanding that, like, when it comes to fashion, unfortunately, I don't know that time period's fashion very well. Yeah. And that makes those shows kind of still enjoyable for me.
Yeah, for me, I don't know it, right?
Yeah.
So I don't have to go, oh my God, I can't believe they're wearing this with that, or that they're wearing that, because I don't know. So I can completely enjoy it and throw myself into it. But in a way, it would be nice to have that background a bit, because you probably even just appreciate things a lot more than I would by watching them and having that background. But
well, it's interesting because just even social structure is very different. Like, man, think of social structure 20 years ago versus now. And even though things didn't change as fast, Outlander time period versus the 15th century, it's pretty substantially different.
Yeah.
Even in just who did what and the clothing and technology. Once those ships started sailing, big, I think of the tall ships, like, I really think of, like, once they started coming to North America, there were so many different things that happened that time.
Right.
The Renaissance might have, been the time of light and all that kind of stuff, but we really slipped back when it came to, like, human rights and stuff like that.
Yeah, for sure.
Fast track on the technology, screw the human being.
It seems about right. So what's your goal with doing your social media and with doing these projects? I mean, obviously it satisfies the researcher and person within you.
Well, for me, I'm never going to become YouTube famous. I already know that, and I kind of that was actually a nightmare for me. I don't ever want to be famous.
Yeah.
That sounds terrifying. So, one, YouTube. I do YouTube videos because I wanted to learn some basic video editing for work. Mm-hmm. And two, it keeps me accountable to me to do a thing instead of saying I'm going to do a thing and then I'm just like, oh, look, a book. I'll just go research some more.
Well, that's even with this art podcast, sort of making the commitment to do it every week.
Yep.
And it's just making that commitment and knowing that I've said it's going to come out this time. And so
when it's not the thing that you get your money from, when it's not your primary job, it's really hard to think of what are you going to do for yourself?
Yeah.
What are you learning? So for me, it's like, what are you learning this month?
Yeah.
And there's a lot of people who are like, what are you talking about? You're not doing this for work? I'm like, no, I'm doing this to tell myself that I can.
Yeah.
And if something that I do, if I make a mistake on there that prevents someone else from making a similar mistake, or if I can just say, hey, I made this, it's not great, but this is how it turned out.
Yeah.
One, I might prevent someone else from doing that. And two, I might learn that it's okay to mess up.
Yeah.
There is a lot of, when I was younger and I was prolific.
You don't seem like the type that messes up very much. You seem kind of perfectionist.
Yeah, in the worst way though. I was one of those, In French immersion, the gifted kid, I remember this one person said doué, that means gifted.
Oh, okay.
And so you didn't mess up. You needed to hold yourself to this idea you were good and you only produced good things.
Right.
And then when I started sewing, I just made a whole bunch of crap. And
Yeah.
it was crap, and I knew it was crap, and for some reason, okay. And then as I got older, I'm like, why isn't your stuff good enough? And this whole thing came in. So just like, get over it, make the thing, do the thing.
Yeah.
I think there's another YouTuber that uses that expression a lot.
Do
now.
the thing.
Just do the thing. And I'm like, that is probably the deepest thing I've ever learned from YouTube. Just do the thing.
I had a sculpture professor at the University of Lethbridge, and I was stuck. Like, it's once you get to a certain part in art, you're just waiting to be able to do what you want without any projects. Da, 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 da. And then all of a sudden I got there and I was like, I don't know what to do. Like, it's this big thing, right? And he was like, just do something.
Yeah.
If you just start and do something instead of just sitting here and feeling like I'll just research more. I think I just need to keep researching. I shouldn't.
Easy.
I know. Like, I fall into research. I love researching, and so I fall into research often, and it can be
And
I'll
then
just
you're like, I'm going to go this
more.
way. I'm just going to go back this way a bit. I'll get there eventually.
Oh, so true. So I've wanted to know about medieval reenactments and the club you have here, and can we just sort of talk a bit about that, because I don't really know, other than sort of seeing pictures where everyone's all dressed up. I don't really know what happens.
So there's actually a lot of different reenactment groups out there.
Yeah.
Our flavor is the Middle Ages, which is essentially anything from the early, high, and late Middle Ages. And we don't necessarily always define that by a time period or a specific date, because depending on where you live, the Renaissance didn't like light switch, it happens and it's slowly spread depending on where you are. For this one, we're trying to get people to recreate stuff from the Middle Ages, and we don't necessarily just reenact one event. What we'll do is we'll ask a person to kind of portray someone who could have existed during their chosen time period and place.
Right.
And research into that. And we kind of keep it fairly broad because we don't really want to force anyone into, you must pick this time period. There are groups out there that are amazing.
Yeah.
That say, we're doing this 25-year period from France, and that's all they do.
Right.
And the stuff and the research that comes out of there, thank you for sharing it.
Yeah.
But that isn't necessarily our goal, because I have surfed a little bit everywhere. I've gone everywhere from my Renaissance time period all the way to my earlier, I tried to do some of the Saxon stuff, and I realized, not my jam right now.
Yeah.
And basically, depending on the event, sometimes we'll try and have a feast, or we'll say, all right, we're going to pretend that we're all this part of France. Notice we didn't necessarily say a time period. This part of France.
Yeah.
And we're going to say that it's a fall feast.
Right.
And then we'll say what foods are available during this time period, what's special, what feast day might be happening at this time.
Yeah.
And then we'll also have camping events where a lot of us, I'm going to say there's actually a lot of people in our group that actually have a medieval pavilion.
And don't you have like a...
I have a big one.
I've seen on Facebook.
I've got a chunk, boy. Yeah.
You've got a glamping.
Oh, yeah. Medieval camping, because you got to think about it. It's a little bit different when you reenact it, because medieval people lived in houses. They did not live in their tents.
Right.
However, a lot of times when they went, it's because maybe they're on campaign, maybe they were moving, maybe they were, there's not a lot of reason why you would have, but you would have brought everything with you.
Were there certain events though, we have Christmas, were there certain events like the equinox or something that then were big celebrations, and maybe they would tend to get
feast days happened. Would you put up a pavilion for it necessarily? No, because a lot of it happened in places, though we do know that when some marriages and stuff like that happened, people would have to bring tents, because just because you're a royal and got to stay in the castle, where's the rest of your people gonna stay?
Right.
And the answer isn't necessarily in town.
Yeah.
So you
Not a
would
lot
have
of
that too.
motels then?
Well, there are a lot of inns, but remember, a lot of the inns had reason and purpose, and traveling was usually you were passing through.
Right.
You would have found a place to stay, and
so is it like a big potluck? Everyone makes things to share? Or
sometimes
does everyone
yes,
make their own thing?
Sometimes yes, and sometimes no, because while we try and be as authentic for your time period as possible, we also recognize we are safety over historical accuracy.
Yeah.
There's a reason why, we're not saying you need to take out your piercings. Right. You need to take off your eyeglasses. Yeah. You need to hide your, medical device. Our group says do your best to hide it.
Yeah.
But we would rather a person wear their glasses than fall flat on their face in the fire pit.
Yeah.
So that's kind of where our boundary is, and each group's going to decide what's there. But one of the things that we do is we actually do have rules about, your clothing. Is what your outfit is made of, is it appropriate for your time, place, and period?
Yeah. So if someone just sort of orders medieval costume online
they're gonna be
that
sad.
Comes in a Fortrell, are they going to be turned away at the gate? Or
first of all, we only have events for members. Do we do what we used to do called public programming back in the pre-plague times? Yes, we'll be at Canada Day and we'll have this, and if someone wants to come out and hang out with us, and if someone wants to sit with us in their medieval-ish, that's fine. Just you're not a member. You're not a member. But that said, if you want to become a member, we'll help you learn how to do the research and the sewing and the we'll help you get the basics so you can become a full member of the group, and then you can focus on who you want to be and what time period you want to be. There's some people who will join because there's combat.
Right.
I'm a big fan of just practicing. Well, I was before COVID. I would go to fighter practice to do kind of jokingly called it sword fu, where I would just I would do the motions of certain fighting motions with the wooden sword.
Oh, okay.
Because it's you do that and it helps. It's like string. It's kind of like what is the thing that you see people do in the park that's like the slow movements?
Oh yeah.
What is it?
Tai Chi?
Yeah, something like that. I kind of think of it as that.
Yeah.
Just with a stick in my hand.
Oh, really?
And it's just I don't like hitting people. It's not my thing. But I am very relaxed with the sword in my. Yep, I like having the wooden sword in my hand, and I just go nice and slow. And it depends on your level. You can do that. You can do the kind of thing where you just have to have a padded jacket. I don't know how to explain it if you haven't seen it. You wear that and you do light hits, and that's kind of like the where they focus on the historical sides of it. There are people who still do the Society for Creative Anachronism style rattan weapon fighting, which is a little bit harder. The armor is pseudo-medieval. And then there's people who do the Battle of Nations and the IMCF, which is the International Medieval Combat Federation, where it's metal swords and you better have the really strong thing. And it's up to you which level you're going to do. That's also another part of the group. We don't have a lot of that happening right now because plague.
Yeah, that's a good word for it.
Plague.
Well, thanks, Stacey. Before we go, can we just kind of maybe show and talk about these?
Apparently,
maybe try and describe them a little bit for our people who are just on the podcast.
I'm gonna do this, and I will just hold it for a second.
Okay.
Because I just don't want to.
Oh.
I hope I just didn't make a big loud noise when I took this off. I apologize if I did.
I want to make sure we can see.
Well, I can duck down too.
Well, there we can see you.
So,
and do you have enough room for your microphone?
Oh yeah,
okay,
no problem.
All right.
So this is my sleeves because apparently I brought two because you can never have enough sleeves.
Yeah, and so these are what you were wearing in the beginning and holding on with the pins.
Yep.
So they would come. Well,
yeah.
Look at the difference in our arm length, though.
Well, you make them for yourself, right?
Yeah.
So that one is a little bit bigger because sometimes I'm wearing thicker
Yeah.
Sometimes I'll wear a wool under as well, an extra layer. You just add it on, it's warm.
Oh, I think they're wonderful.
Okay, and this one is this is out of the big 4 pattern groups. Like, I think it was Simplicity or Ever. And it's not really that authentic, but it was my first attempt at doing something
Well, and I just love the color and the material, of course. Yeah.
Yeah, and it fits. Oh my God, it fit me perfectly at the time.
But, yeah. So there, it's got the green velvet trim, and then just this beautiful, beautiful, you wouldn't call it purple. What color is this really? I mean, it's purple, but it has...
To me, if you're going to call anything purple, that's the color that I say purple is.
Okay, good. And it's a long dress, and it's kind of that umpire waist then.
Yeah, so what you call the houppelon is like the first time that we're seeing a lot of the empire waist kind of style. I know we call it empire waist now because the houppelon where you fit it right here. Yeah. It's so good for big girls.
Yeah, exactly. It's so flattering. It's flattering on everyone, really. All right. And then this is that green one we were talking about earlier.
It's the green coat that I made for Doug, and it buttons up in the front. And it is like, just it's so comfortable. Like, sometimes if I can't figure out where my house coat is, I highly suggest make yourself one of those.
Yeah, I could just see that. One of the things too, you called it a coat, which is COTTE, right? Yeah. And is that the same, is that a coat? Like we would
think of it as a coat. Yeah. Go ahead. So it's overwear. You would wear a tunic, and for that time period, you are going to wear hose and your little, I'm going to call them boxers they're not boxers in Medieval, but they're braids. But think of boxers. Okay. And then you would have hose that, as time goes on, you'll actually have hose that actually you just put on, think of like tights, but they're like 2 tubes that you tie onto your thing. They're really great for when it's really warm because you can actually like roll them down, and then you just put a garter around there and you tie it, and it's like just wearing your boxers around.
Well, and what sort of besides the undergarment, are women and men mostly just wearing the undergarment with nothing else? Besides the men, you're sort of saying there's kind of boxers. Well, are women they're not wearing bras? They're not wearing corsets?
No, you usually have something a little tighter up here. Yeah. There's no evidence I've yet to find evidence of underwear for women. Yeah. Yeah. That said, women have always been stealing men's fashion, so...
Yeah, could have been under there. Yeah. Someone told me at one point that women wore like no underwear. So when they were working like in the fields or something, they could literally kind of go to the washroom easier.
They could have. They could have. I know by the Victorian era, women had extra, and I'm going to totally steal Abby Cox for the YouTuber on this one. They wore extra aprons underneath that they would bring forward and that they would wear during their periods. Oh. And she tried wearing one for a week. Yeah. And she says just as comfortable as a modern convenience. There you go. Hey? Yeah. So maybe they did that and we just don't know. There seems to be, unless if you wrote about it to another woman a lot of time periods were told not to talk about that. Oh. So, I mean, heck, you can't even say tampon without people getting uncomfortable these days, right? And what year are we?
Yeah, exactly.
All right. Okay. This is an old one that honestly is an example of something that I need to work on. This is called a Leary pipe hood. This is a hood that you pull like right over your head.
Really?
You put your head through.
So this would go like this.
Pull your head all the way through that hole and make sure it fits. Yeah, there you go.
Oh.
There you go. And the dags are to show off how rich you are.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
For feels really good, actually.
It's really nice and warm. Yeah. That one's comfortable.
Do you ever wear it when you go out for a walk?
Yes.
I totally would.
Yeah. There's that one, and for ladies, it's actually more fashionable, I guess, for the place that I'm going time period wise, for it to be open and for you to have buttons. So technically that's men's style, but whatever.
Yeah. Static cling now.
All right, let me show you the cloak that I most recently made. This one, I'm not a fan of it because you can see where I used my serger. I still serge almost everything I have, which is not medieval.
Yeah.
But then I still fell it down.
Oh, okay.
I'm just going to say, go ahead and stand.
Okay.
And I'm going to put this on because the way that I actually constructed it, it should sit on your shoulders. Oh, there's no, I'll just stand normal.
Oh.
Yeah, I'm just going to.
Okay.
There you go.
So we're putting it over kind of like a cape?
Yep. That's it. And the way that I found it, it will just stay on here.
It totally does stay.
Yeah.
I'm in love with this. I might not give it back.
It's one of the easiest things to make.
It's so wonderful.
Now, I have found in the 15th century, there's not a lot of pictures of women wearing cloaks because I have found the houppelande, which is like one of the versions of this. Yeah. There's a bigger one. It's like a bigger version of that, and I'm almost wondering, I'm like, did they just wear those but lined instead of wearing a cloak?
Right.
So I still love it because there's nothing better than being
And you said
fire.
It's pretty easy to make?
This one I actually think is really, I can teach this at a beginner workshop.
Well, if you have one, let me know.
Yeah.
When COVID quits.
Yeah.
If you decide to have a cloak workshop. Yeah. I only have a singer that goes frontwards and backwards.
Yep, you're good.
Because that's all I can do.
But remember, they didn't even have that, so.
Yeah. Oh, I like this.
Yeah, just wear it. If you're cold, wear it.
Yeah. I know. Why didn't I have this out here before?
I know. I should have just. I'm a jerk. That's
but
why.
I do just love. You're right. The way it sits on your shoulders.
Yep.
Like it's just really, really nice.
Could I have a clasp on it? Yeah, but I don't need it.
Yeah.
I didn't make it that way.
No, that's the thing. It doesn't feel like you would. Like it really feels like it's gonna sit.
All right. This is one of the first things I ever made, and I still have it. This is just an example of costuming. This is not necessarily even an example of how to do it right. Yeah. This is just a big shirt, big peasant type shirt. It is made out of the most scary polyester ever. But I'm just saying, if you want to make yourself stuff, you can start somewhere.
Yeah.
But that thing works amazingly.
It feels really nice too. It's got a nice weight to it.
One of my Italian Renaissance dresses that I made.
Ooh, cha-cha.
And you'll see it goes perfectly underneath this guy. Oh, that's the back. This thing right here.
I should have set our camera up better.
That's okay.
So that we could
And that is a brocade. It is definitely a man-made brocade, but it's a really pretty one. It even has like
pretty.
You can tell that it's right for the time period because you see the flowers, this like pomegranate type flower.
Oh, right. So
that one's spot on.
The design of it is something that would have been.
And this is when I discovered how evil eyelets are.
Oh, wow.
I actually
Did you do those by hand?
Oh, so I did a dumb thing where I used the two-piece pop rivet thingies, or eyelet things, and I got clunk, and then I sewed around each one.
Oh.
That don't do that
necessarily that easy. No.
Okay, well, they're great because they're going to keep the circle open.
Right.
But the reason you don't want that is this is now dry clean only. I could never actually wash it because there's metal in there. It's going to rust. And I've had a dress, and it was a really pretty fantasy stretch velvet cream dress. And it was beautiful. And I did the exact same thing, and then I washed it.
Oh.
Rust.
Oh,
it rusted. It was
so
sad.
those are listening on the podcast. They're very beautiful. It has the lacing coming up the back, and so she has used the two clasp metal grommet.
Grommet. Yeah, that's exactly the word.
And then stitched over it. So it's got a really lovely look to it. Yep. But now she has to dry clean. And then this, right.
And then I made this out of the matching.
Which I know. See, this is the one I like.
And
so this you would wear to a ball.
Yeah, the only thing is I didn't make this to hold, so I specifically made this so I actually have to take it down.
Right.
But I also made this in a way to almost be
it?
It depends on the thing. I don't know enough about Italian.
When I watch movies, they always have them on sticks.
They have them on sticks. They have them tied with lace.
Yeah.
But if you're hosting, I'm not entirely sure you want your face to be hidden.
Right.
You want just hold it.
It's just more of an accessory.
Yeah. It's a really freaking pretty accessory.
It is. It is.
And then I've got the hat. Let me just put this back in that tub. Plunk.
Thanks so much for bringing these things so we can have a look at what we're talking about.
Okay, this is a crazy hat. I call this the volcano hat because you put it on the back of your head and then you're supposed to put your hair through it.
So,
yeah, your hair goes through like a ponytail. So you
so
actually
it's
put
going
it on
back here.
Yeah, and then you put yourself in a high ponytail and you make sure that the hair comes out the back of it.
So it's important to have that hair coming
Yeah.
up. And I think you'd mentioned earlier that sometimes they...
Oh yeah, they would totally buy hair to put fake hair on.
Yeah.
They would buy hair for poorer people.
It's nice. It's still really soft.
I can't believe
And
that thing
light.
has lasted as long as it has. That thing's old. That thing's like... I think that's approaching...
And it's still white. How are you keeping it white?
You know the can of air that you get for your computer?
Oh,
I do that.
really?
Yeah, because I have it out on display.
Right.
I have it in my sewing space because even though some of these things are crazy, I have another big one kind of similar to that.
Yeah.
It has like these two little, it's kind of like this one actually.
Yeah.
Where it has like two little kind of antennae that come off of it to do something called a butterfly hennin, and you actually like put a veil over top of it to make it come out like that. But I'll tell you, you're sitting down and not doing anything when you're wearing those things.
Well, because often that would be the way, right? They wouldn't be doing...
Yeah, that's actually one thing. Like, if you want to look at all these really pretty 15th century women,
yeah,
the higher class they are, probably the less likely they're doing anything. Mm-hmm. And they're just sitting there. I'm like, well, that's really pretty, but they're not doing anything.
Right.
And people worked. So.
Yeah. Well, and especially when the belt you're wearing, is that something?
So there's a good chance that this belt here is actually a men's belt and not a proper woman's belt. They would have belted, but I don't know if they would have belted with leather or if they actually would have used in like woven or fabric.
And these are prayer beads, no?
This is actually, for my time period, it would have been exceptionally rare, and I feel a little bit weird wearing this because, like, I'm not Catholic.
Yeah.
But to not have, you would have thought of this as a rosary, but this is a paternoster.
Right.
Yeah, and it would have been really weird for you to not wear one because you kind of wanted to fit in.
So even if you weren't religious, although I've been thinking of these lately just as aware, like using them just for an awareness, or when you have anxiety to be able to. So same thing. They
actually had something like that for people who maybe were a little neurodivergent. When you see someone in a picture wearing like a foxtail, that is not a symbol of status. That is most likely something letting the person know that they were probably thought of as a fool.
Oh, really?
And then when I talked to some of my friends who are neurodivergent, they said, well, wouldn't that be a fantastic calming...
So,
like,
that's what as soon as you said that,
it's like a
that's
tactile
all
thing,
I
right?
could think about is just having that too.
So when I see someone wear one at a fair and stuff like that, I kind of want to let them know, but at the same time, I don't, because what if that is their tactile, like, comfort tool?
True.
So I usually would never mention that.
Well, and especially because people who are wearing it, especially at a fair, I guess, would be different, right?
Yeah, but maybe they have anxiety being out with people. Like, I don't know. Yeah. I don't want to call attention to something that might make their life worse. Yeah. So I won't. This is my little bag of fun stuff, and I don't know if these actually are medieval. I just put my fun little things on them.
And these pins would have been something they would have used, though?
Yes. If you were fortunate enough to have the colorful pins, and I am because Chris Fisher blows glass. I asked him
Did he make these?
He made all of these.
No way. I didn't know he blew glass.
Oh yeah, he does all the glassware for the science department. A lot of times they would have just used like really simple pins. Yeah. But they would have had.
These are just beautiful.
They would have had color pins. You put them on if I'm going to do a proper former veil where I have like it all the way around and everything, and I want to pin it in, and I want to show some bling. Yeah. That's when I have those guys.
No, these are, they're really beautiful. I'll maybe take a picture after so I can post it. How fortunate you are to have some handmade ones.
Oh, man, I am one lucky person these are the, I don't know what I'm doing and I figured I'd just experiment. Do you think they're good enough? And I'm like, you're worse than I am.
So, and before COVID hit,
Yep.
You did do a couple classes, right?
Yep.
I remember hearing about and that I wanted to come to at Theoretical Brewing, who
Yep.
we've talked about, Chris Fisher.
That's
That's
one of his babies.
Yeah,
Yep.
one
Him
of
and
his
Kelty.
babies. And so it has a wonderful space in it
Yeah.
that you can go and sit and have beer or whatever, but also that you can have community gatherings.
Yeah, you
which
can
is
rent
lovely.
it for community gatherings. And who doesn't want to have a community gathering where you can have a beer?
And it's such a nice space.
Yeah.
It's just kind of this warm.
Have you seen it since they've redone it?
No.
Oh, God, it's so pretty.
I can't wait. Well, because
Yeah.
I was watching the roof and
Yeah.
stuff like that. So I definitely have to get in there. I thought about a couple times I drove by because I saw their outside patio. It
Yeah.
looks so fabulous. But, and it's the place where I went in and said, I don't like beer. What can I drink?
And
she gave me a drink. I was like, I love this. This is amazing.
I
So-
don't like a lot of canned beer. I'm not a big drinker in general, but they always have something that I'm like, I like this.
Yeah.
They always have something that I'm like, this is tasty.
Yeah. Well, and I like when I went in there, they're just like, yeah, no worry. I'll bring you something.
You don't have to like beer to have stuff there. And then they also are very supportive of other places that sometimes they have
Yes.
cider and sometimes they'll just even have root beer from Annex Ale. So, I mean, it's just so nice to have like a very welcoming space.
It is. And with them, I mean, obviously they're doing the brewing,
Yep.
but there's other talents as well that are.
It's really interesting
Yeah.
because sometimes they'll have artists in to like show off their stuff. Like
Yeah.
I mentioned in my video that the shears, one of the persons I was able to contact someone who used to make jewelry, who's going to make me the sewing shears that I need for my project. And he was at Theory Brew. He's
Oh.
actually a member of the Lethbridge Medieval Club as well.
Yeah.
But it's great because they'll have different like creators actually use their space to be like, hey, I'm going to display some stuff here.
Yeah.
Go shop and have a beer, like, brilliant. That's community done right.
Well, and there is a Facebook group, right?
Yep.
And even for Theoretical Brewing, I think I'll put their link as well.
They're really great people.
Yeah, they're really good
the whole
people,
team,
and-
like, there's Chris, there's Kelty, there's Kelty's significant other, Matt, and then there's Kayla, and man, there isn't an amazing, like, every single one of them are amazing in their own right.
Yeah, and so welcoming.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for joining me. It was wonderful learning, and I don't think I'll be giving Cloak back.
Oh, we'll make you one in a
But-
bright color instead. We'll find you some. We'll find you something in a bright color because, like, I know you like this, but I know you like brighter colors. We'll look at the
It's
mills.
wonderful.
Yeah.
Well, thanks again, and thanks for showing us and letting us know. And there are several links that we're going to want to put up, just for yours, and then a couple that you talked about. It'd be great to have those. too.
Yeah, we're gonna have to go back and find those.
Yeah.
You're welcome.
Thanks again.
Thanks.
Cheers.
Bye.